来简单的看一下今天的整个活动流程。首先我会进行一个非常简单的开幕，大概5分钟的时间，接下来就会把重头的时间交给我们今天的重磅嘉宾 Fiona 陈博士。陈博士在进行差不多30分钟的分享之后，我们留足了时间为大家进行 Q&A 环节。最后我们也希望可以捕捉到今天大家学术碰撞的一些火花，因此会有一个合照环节。对，我也看到今天很多参加的都是我们的老朋友了，相信大家也对我们的整一个流程包括不同的分享还是非常有经验，也挺期待的。在刚开始的时候，对，我还是需要来介绍一下我们的全球发展与科研治理工作坊，就是我们在联合国峰会在2024年的时候就提出过，我们希望需要变革全球治理，加强多边体系，同时也强调了就是青年我们是积极改变的关键力量。因此在2025年，我们 GIEGG 这个国际学术期刊重磅推出了12期公益的全球发展与科研治理工作坊。我们已经邀请了比如说来自牛津的博士、北大清华，包括LSE 或者新加坡国立等名校的博士，我们希望为大家带来最前沿的学术工作与实践引荐。然后关于我们的这一本期刊，这是中国的第一本青年学术导向型的全英文期刊，然后我们希望特别是为青年学者提供一个非常前沿、权威和严谨的学术研究和思想平台。关于这本期刊呢，它因为确实是一个 baby， 我们是在去年刚迎来它1岁多的生日，然后我们的核心优势是我们会聚焦全球治理的热点，并且我们的整一个投稿也是不会看资历的，我们的投稿审稿速度也非常的快，不论你是本科生、硕士还是博士，我们都非常欢迎大家可以来试一试，让你的整个学术科研的成果让更多的人听到。然后我们的整个学术科研的征稿方向也非常多，不管是国际经济、全球治理、国际关系，还是跨学科和新议题，因此希望大家可以成为我们的新老朋友。我们也有一个青年实训营，今天应该是倒数第6天，会有非常牛的大咖带领大家来看如何写科研论文，因此如果大家感兴趣的话，也都欢迎关注我们的微信公众号。OK， 接下来我们来回归主题我们也非常感谢各位联合主办单位，比如说浙江大学的国际发展与治理研究中心、北京语言大学国际关系学院、南京大学区域国别研究院、国政学人以及各位学生协办单位和支持单位对我们工作的支持，相信在大家的努力下，我们的工作会越来越好。好了，我们现在抓紧时间回归正题。今天我们非常荣幸的邀请到了来自剑桥大学政治与国际研究系发展学2023级的博士研究生陈泽立博士。然后陈博士呢，本科毕业于北京外国语大学马来语言与文学专业，后面又赴剑桥大学获得了发展学的硕士。陈博士在不同的期刊当中也有发表过成果，主要研究在马来西亚的政治和历史议题。因此在陈博士介绍完整一个如何提出研究问题的之后，我们也非常期待陈博士可以向我们介绍一下他关于马来西亚相关的研究。关于这次的整一个主题，我们也确实是迎来了一个比较大的变革。之前我们都是会聚焦在一个比较宏观的主题，比如说气候变化呀，或者国际政治，或者大国关系。但是考虑到可能各位青年学者对如何提出研究问题等比较细节或者说实际的方向会更感兴趣，因此这次我们也非常感谢陈博士受邀，然后我们做了一些简单的变动，希望可以帮大家更好的了解到问题建构的核心技巧，然后为迈入高质量的社会科学研究打下坚实的基础。OK， 接下来我就会把话筒交给我们的陈博士，也非常期待你的分享。
Okay, you can hear me, right? You can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me share my slide first. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, okay, there we go. So I'm very happy to be here today, and I have a master's in philosophy and development studies from Cambridge. I'm now doing my PhD there in the same department. Today I'm going to briefly talk about how to come up with a good research question, which is a very, very broad topic within itself. Like the monitor has just said, you've been following the organized talks then you realize there's a slight shift from the topic, from the previous topics to this one. The committee asked me specially to talk about something more relatable and hope that it might benefit you a little bit more about listening to this topic rather than seeing me talk about Malaysian history and all that. But for those who did come here with an interest in area studies and Malaysian studies, I have my email address in the bottom of the screen. Feel free to email me with any questions that you have. Okay, so let's start with today's presentation. This is a brief outline of today's content. It looks quite long. I'm going to attempt to walk you through the steps of coming up with a good research question, hopefully. And I guess I'm trying to keep it short and sweet for everyone. So knowing how to come up with a research question is one of the first steps to an article or a dissertation. And the significance of this is that it's your first true attempt to flag your research and what it's about to the people who are reading, whether it's your article, it's your book, or your dissertation. A well-crafted research question defines the scope of the inquiry, aligns with the methodological approaches, and contributes with theoretical advancements. So it signals to your readers what they are reading and whether it fits their interests. It's one of the first things that people will actually pay attention to when they're reading an article or a book. Sorry, I keep on clicking some other stuff. So normally it's fairly easy to know what a research question is, as there will be a lot of indicators. First, trust me, not like all of researchers want you to find what they're researching about. They're not trying to hide what they're studying about from you. So likewise, when you present your research question within whatever you're writing, make sure that it's clearly written and make sure that it's straightforward and it's easy to understand. Don't use all of the academic jargons that are not necessary. Make it clear cut and make it simple to understand. You would find it in different parts of a journal article, including the introduction or background section. People would kind of repeat it in the methodology and literature review section as well to kind of highlight what they're trying to do. And there would be quite distinct kind of sentences saying the aim of the study will be blah, 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 or the research question will be whatever. And it's quite easy to identify. So when you're writing your own things and when you're reading stuff, I think you could like pay attention and try and look for those so you can kind of see how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and where exactly does it pop up within a research. So normally it's fairly okay. Sorry. So I guess the standard process of formulating a question is there is no clear-cut kind of step-by-step. There is a general kind of idea. There's only two ways about how academics and my colleagues and my friends have normally came up with research questions. It's one I like to call a standard normal process. And the other one is what we kind of call a artificial forced process. Starting with the easier one, the forced way to some degree is fairly easy. People mostly skim through whatever top journals and books and publishers are publishing currently, and they kind of spot out what's trending, what's the latest flashy topics, and it's quite obvious when you kind of spot patterns within the journals and what they're constantly publishing. For example, a couple of years back, it was Russian and Ukraine. Now it's trade wars. Now it's AI. There's a general pattern to it, so it can be quite easily spotted when you're constantly looking through the top journals. I guess it's not something I can teach you today because it's not really a skill. If you know how to do it, you know how to do it. If you've read enough things, you can actually spot the patterns. It's not something that can be taught. It's more about you just have to read enough things. The more natural way comes with human curiosity, which is something I've listed here on the slide. It definitely does take a lot more time. You might read something somewhere and it comes across as interesting, and the more you read about it, the more curious it gets. You might see some piece of news on whatever platform you're using, and then that just pops up, and it somehow gets latched on the back of your brain, and you remember it from somewhere. And once you've read enough things, and here I don't just mean like articles or books or anything. It could be newspapers, it could be just randomly scrolling on Instagram, and you see whatever something social related has and pops up. It all counts. So you start unconsciously making links between the materials and stories that you've read, and that's where you kind of that's where the magic kind of begins. Once you start making certain connections and things start to come together, you kind of turn it into a phenomenon. You take the details out of the stories, and you kind of spot there's a pattern or a trend to whatever's going on. It may be across different regions. It may be places that has nothing interconnected whatsoever, but somehow there's things similar happening in different places. You kind of take that, and then you have what you see as an interesting phenomenon to yourself. From that, we can move on, and from that, you kind of can move on, and you found this interesting phenomenon, you've got your pattern, and you're trying to figure out what that means. Is there somewhere or something out there that this phenomenon can reveal or predict? Is it going to lead to something? Is there a theory that can explain what caused this to happen? This is where we actually come to step 3. So why is it puzzling? What does the tension reveal? And it means that you found this thing that it's this common kind of pattern, and you're trying to make sense of it. How do we actually do that? It's very hugely unlikely that you're the first person ever in the wide universe to kind of spot this pattern. So I do beg everyone, please, to refer to literature before you think you filled a research gap or you've found something that you think is absolutely novel and original and amazing by sitting on your couch and listening to your brain churn for an hour. Do go and read literature. Why is engaging with literature really important? Because more often than not, someone has worked on something similar before. I'm very sorry to say that, but rarely any of us can actually come up with anything that's spectacular and unseen before. Engaging with literature is one of the most effort-consuming and probably also the most productive process in this whole step-by-step, because, and I quote from van der Waalt, the literature review exposes contradictions or understudied areas that can guide the formulation of research questions. A well-structured literature review builds the rationale for the research question. It shows the significance of the question by highlighting why it is important, how it fits into existing research, and what contribution the study will make to the field. So it lets you position where your study goes and how it fits into the rest of the huge dialogue that's going on in the academic world. By engaging in literature and identifying the gap that you're about or plan to fill, it tells you that if you spotted something new, if it contradicts or complements anything studies that have been done before you have made, and then it builds a foundation of what you're trying to do. So this is your justification of why you're doing a certain research when it comes to your defense or when you're trying to sell it to publishers. It tells them why your research is important and what does it have to do with the things that have come before. And by doing the literature review, engaging with previous literature, you can also get inspirations from it to see kind of how other people have tackled similar questions or phenomenons, and to see what road or angle or argument they have taken, which could provide you with alternative ways of thinking and engaging with your own research question. So once you've done all that, you've read your literature, you've kind of piled them up, you've fit them together and see how your own research fits, you kind of start to polish and formulate your question. And I get that this process isn't easy. It's not as easy as skimming through what's hot and trending and trying to do something or imitate something similar like that. But I guess it's a good starting point, and it's a needed process if you want to kind of form a grounded, solid research. And I guess some people came here with hopefully not, but some people might have came here today to hope that I could give you some magic formula to solve the problem. But to be honest, sadly, there is nothing. There is no singular formula or magic solution. Research questions come in all shapes and sizes, metaphorically speaking, and it really depends on what you're trying to achieve within your research. I've listed a couple of different research questions that could give you a general idea of what I'm trying to say. So there's the contextual research question, which is used to understand the specific nature of a situation or an environment or a lived experience. And it's one of those really, really descriptive things. So you're not necessarily trying to seek causation or solution to a question. You're more like trying to describe what it's about and people's experiences and all that. And then we have the more commonly found qualitative questions, which is trying to explore how and why a phenomenon occurs within a certain setting. And you're going to use data, and you're gonna have to interview people and all that. So it's mostly a deep dive into a handful of cases, and it's mostly very thick on description as well. Quantitative research questions. There's people have given me questions before this session, and tons of them have touched upon this. People seem very much interested in this topic for some reason. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but there seems to be a preference for this now. It is used to measure relationships or effects using numerical data, often testing hypothesis. They come up with great, nice, fancy charts that people always like, and it requires all measurable variabilities and statistical analysis, which is a skill that needs to be acquired and doesn't just come naturally. Apart from the more commonly known ones, you get the descriptive research question, which provides an account of the characteristics, forms, and patterns of a phenomenon. They're trying to describe something, so they want to tell the readers why certain things exist rather than why it happens. They're like the contextual ones. It's not about cause and solution. It's more about why and how. Evaluation research questions mostly is used, I would say, in public policy research, which assesses the effectiveness or the impact of a certain policy, a program, practice, and it's often tied to policy reviews, like I said, and applied in research. So they want to know what's the after effects of certain decisions that are implemented within a certain area. This would be how their questions would be formed. Explanatory questions itself, it clarifies why something happens, identifies causal mechanisms or contributing factors. And this is one of those things that goes beyond description to uncover underlying reasons. Does A cause B, or is it B that causes whatever's going on, that other phenomenon that's happening in other end of the world? So they want to know what caused what and what's leading to the other thing happening. Exploratory questions investigates new or poorly understood topics to generate insight or directions for further studies. I think we could kind of characterize all the studies on AI right now as exploratory research questions. They're very new, they're very novel, and they're flashy. But on the other hand, they're also very, very hard to do because no one has done them before. There's very minimum limited literature that you can refer to, and there's not a lot of theory, and it's hard to get data. It's one of those things that you have to be, you really have to know your field to be able to do. And generative research questions, it imagines possibilities, assesses hypothetical scenarios, and design problem-solving approaches. It's normally future-oriented, and it's the how would you or what if questions that they kind of answer and ask. These are just some, they're not all of them. There's definitely more niche categories that come within different types of research questions. But I guess this gives us a general idea about what I'm talking about when it comes to there is no single formula to a good research question. I think what we have to know is that different research questions have different research aims and objectives. And it's very important to realize that different disciplines favor different types of research questions. Political sciences like to do the causal explanatory questions, A led to B kind of questions. Anthropology likes to have the contextual questions to really thickly kind of describe all the niche day-to-day details of certain tribe or a village. Development studies, something that I'm in, is more normative or critical questions. We kind of combine both of them. We say that social science is, we talk about social science as if it's a thing, but it actually isn't. It's one of those it's one of those phrases that we call an umbrella term. So there's so much nuance and there's so much detail within the term itself. We can't really lump them all together and talk about them as if they were just one single thing. How you ask a research question, how you phrase a research question has a lot to do with the characteristics of the discipline that you're in yourself, and the discipline normally and how that certain discipline normally pays attention to whatever questions it pays attention to and how it traditionally gathers its data. So I got this question before this pre-session about how to balance descriptive questions and descriptive context and keeping this dialogue alive with theoretical contributions and all that. I think it's one of those things that seems like a dilemma, but really isn't, in the sense that because different disciplines do favor different ideas, and it's normally the anthropologists who go really heavy on descriptive work, and the IR people that does the dialogue with theories. I rarely find one discipline that needs both. Maybe development studies is one of them, but they don't put a really heavy emphasis on both things. It's like what they always say, you really can't get the best of both worlds, and it goes with social science disciplines itself. There's a lot of nuance within social sciences, so it's very unfair to just talk about them as if they were one singular thing. So when we're when people are asking me questions, do tell me what discipline you're from, because there are different emphases within the discipline itself. Like I just said, the characters of your discipline are going to determine what a good research question is for you and what your discipline wants to answer. So is it a very micro versus macro kind of description? Is it empirical? Is it theoretical? It really depends on what discipline you're in. I've asked ChatGPT to make me a very beautiful chart here that I've presented. And you can kind of see from the horizontal axis, it's from abstract theory to empirical detail. And then the vertical axis is from macro structure to micro practice. So the horizontal axis is very much linked to how practical your question needs to be and whether you need to do field work, which is some people who would want to know whether it's necessary. And the vertical axis is linking to what level of the phenomenon are you looking at? Is it a subnational within the state kind of level? Are you looking at the village level? Are you looking at the provincial level? Or is it the really high up regional or global kind of issues that you're trying to discuss? So you can kind of see how the different disciplines are spread along this kind of sheet. And there are different emphases that come with the discipline itself. So when you're talking about what a good research question is, you really have to combine it with what discipline you come from and what background you come from. Knowing what your discipline is, how your discipline is positioned, is a key to understanding what a good research question is for you. And it's a crucial part of coming up with your own research question because it has to fit your discipline in some way. There are some extremes that we could probably talk about. One is IR on the very top here. So it focuses on state behavior, power structures, and theoretical theories, which is like really high up, really macro kind of level research. And on the other side, you don't really need to know about what happens day to day in a village, right? And then you see on the very edge here, we have anthropology. On the very corner down low, we have anthropology, which is based on a very immersive fieldwork and ethnographic detail. It's highly content sensitive. You don't need to know what's happening in the country. Maybe it does have effect, but you don't really know what the policymakers are thinking. You're paying attention to how the kid gets war, how they go to school, and all that detail. We have development studies kind of sitting in the middle of the chart here. And itself, due to its characteristics as a discipline, it's interdisciplinary, and it combines theoretical reflection with empirical work, and it often looks at global south settings, which is, you can kind of say it's the best of both worlds, but then it is also a challenge to researchers ourselves, since you have to know the place, and then you have to know your theory, and you have to kind of combine them together. So knowing your discipline is quite important when it comes to trying to find a research question that's valuable to your own discipline. Another question that popped up in the pre-session survey is how to identify valuable and meaningful research questions in the field. I have to say thank you to the person who asked this question. I'm quite grateful how they phrased it, as it puts a lot of emphasis on meaningful and valuable and not publishable, because that's two completely different things. I think across all disciplines, there are two ways to make research stand out. It is either empirical contribution or theoretical contribution. And that's what makes research valuable. And it's not just within area studies, but across all disciplines. Good research, I think, should tell me something that I didn't know before I read the journal or the book or whatever. Rarely, in very rare cases, can scholars do both, but we can always try to aim higher. When we say theoretical contributions, it means new concepts, frameworks, causal mechanisms. It's something that people haven't come up with before. empirical contribution is relatively easier in the sense that it just means new case studies, original fieldwork, new data. If you have that, then you have empirical contributions. So the one on the right seems a little bit easier than the one on the left. Most people, or I've read a lot of work that just falls into the low contribution area, which is literary summary or redundant testing. What I would say is don't repeat what people have said before. We don't need people to waste their time on things that we already know. So try and aim a little higher. We might not be able to get the best of both worlds and accomplish both great theoretical contribution, empirical contributions, but we can always try. Even published works don't accomplish both, so maybe don't go too harsh on yourself. And last but not least, what is also very important is when you think about a research question, you've done all your reading, you've done all your pre-research, you know what's been done before. One very, very important idea is it feasible? Is your research question doable? One of the questions I got yesterday was in conducting qualitative research in international relations, apart from fieldwork, are there any good entry points or methods for obtaining data? And I think this reflects a lot on the mindset this person was in, because they really have been thinking about how their research was doable, how are they going to get their data. And it is one of those very practical constraints that researchers do face in their career. Is you have this great question, you're going to research, you're going to do a survey about the whole country. It's just too big. You can't really achieve that. You can't do that maybe in 5 or 10 years, probably with the state backing you, great. But most people can't achieve that scale of a work. So when it comes to thinking, is it researchable? Is it doable? There's a checklist you can kind of refer to is, can it be observed? Can it be measured? Is it a little too broad? Are you looking at a village, which is doable, or are you looking at the whole country? That's a little too big. Time frame. Time frame either refers to, do you have the time and money to actually go there and do that within, I don't know, a year or 2 years, whatever your grant covers? Or can it be done within, I don't know, a master's degree or a PhD degree? Because there's a time limit on those, and there's only so long you can drag that out. One of the most overlooked things, I think, in the domestic area is ethics. Are there any sensitivities? Are you working with human? Are they underage? Are you going to impact them in any way? Are you interviewing people and they don't want their names to be out there? You could be doing something political sensitive and you're going to interview someone. They're going to tell you something great that helps your research. And then you name them out in your research and you get them killed. You might think I'm being a little dramatic, but that is what happens. And researchers have died and lost their lives because of this. So are there any ethic issues when it comes to doing your research? Going back to the question of fieldwork and all that, fieldwork, I think, is another one of those things that has a lot of meaning to it. In many cases, it doesn't really mean you have to go into the fields or you have to go into the village. It just means you physically being in the place that you're researching. And personally, I think there's a lot of advantages of physically being there, because you meet people, you build connections, and you kind of frame your own network, which would potentially benefit you one way or another when it comes to your future work. But yes, that's definitely not the only way to obtain data. The web's very developed, especially after post-COVID. You can always interview people online. You can do Zoom calls. There are databases which are openly accessible. So there are workarounds around it. And you don't really have to stick to one thing, but there are definitely benefits that you can't have if you're not physically there. So I have 5 more minutes. I'll try and keep this in time. So, kind of to sum things up, we've talked about a lot of how to come up with a good research question, and there's a very simple framework that us as social sciences have borrowed from clinical research, which is called the FINER framework. And each letter of FINER stands for something as shown on the screen. They've put feasibility at the top, and it's really considering whether your research is practical and doable within whatever limit that you're bound to. Interesting. Is your study going to captivate the attention of researchers and the wider audience, including donors, peers, collaborators? Novel? Is it new? Is it going to bring something new to the table? Am I going to learn something I didn't know before I read your research? Ethical? It's a cornerstone of any credible research. Is it conducted with respect, integrity? Is it safeguarding the dignity and well-being of the people who are involved? Very crucial. And relevant. Is it relevant to the real world? Is it making sure that the findings have practical implications and great actual real life influences, and just not throwing money away for something else? And I think this is a fairly easy framework to remember, and something that we can all take away from today's session, hopefully. Credits to the people I have used and referred to in my PowerPoint and slide. And I think I'm done. We can move on to the Q&A session. I think I'm just on time.
Okay, very good time catching. Thank you so much for your presentation. 好，我来切一个中文，就是非常感谢 Fiona 陈博士的一个非常精彩的关于 research question 的一个讲解，就是我听完我也觉得非常的受益，就是从不同的方面，包括如何通过 literature 来读啊，包括不同的学科应该如何来选择等等，我觉得确实是对于准备做研究的很多小伙伴们，包括青年学者们，起到了一个非常好的带头和 guidance 的作用。接下来我们会留大概20分钟的时间给大家来，是不是卡着了？对，我大概会留20分钟的时间给大家来提问，也欢迎大家开麦直接抛出自己的问题，当然也可以在聊天框里面提出自己的问题，就中英文不限，就是大家觉得怎么提问更方便就行。然后我也会目前先留1分钟的时间给大家思考自己想要提什么问题，如果已经有想法了，也可以直接 Q。大家可以先想一想，也非常感谢陈博士的整个分享。就是我，也就是研究小白如，我确实没有研究过，没有发现原来 research question 有这么多的讲究，不管是从宏观还是微观，包括它的落地性，以及它需要考虑的很多现实，就是理论和现实得相结合。对，感觉很多小伙伴们应该在写毕业论文，或者说想要论文发表等等过程中，应该也有不同的想法。对，大家可以先想一想。Okay, I have a question, but Nisa 你变成了只跟我说，没有变成 public question，所以你是想直接现在开麦呢，还是我替你问这个问题呢 ，Nisa？ Nisa 没有反应吗 ？OK， 那我来替 Nisa 来问一下陈博士。哦，他希望我来问 ，OK， 他想知道的是 How do you come up with your PhD research topic？ 陈博，Fiona, it's your turn. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. How did I come up with my research topic? My PhD research topic. So physically, I came up with my topic when I was lying on my carpet in my dorm. It was actually because I read something for a class, and it raised certain questions that I had relating to Malaysia, which didn't quite fit what I understood that was going on in Malaysia, and there was a contradiction. So that became quite interesting to me. So I began reading a lot about the theory itself, and I thought I might as well do something about it.
Okay, good. 就是感受到了 research question 就是在不断的积累和突然的，就是灵光一现当中就会出现。是的，然后我们刚刚在那个讨论的时候，也有，就是我们在开始前有讨论过，有一个朋友小伙伴提问说，他想搞一些关于数据的学术研究，但是觉得是能力有限，找不到，没有感觉特别多的资料，也没有观点，提不出任何问题。不确定这位提问的小伙伴是否现在在现场呢？我们非常的好奇。陈博士也想，如果在现场的话，我们可以更针对性的回答一下你的问题。OK， 好像这位小伙伴因为时间原因没有出现，所以陈博士可以就是非常宏观的概括一下，如果我们确实就是比如说觉得自己特别没有自信啊，或者说就觉得自己的研究能力或者数据分析能力特别有限，你觉得什么会是一个比较好的 starting point？ 包括我觉得我们的很多听众小伙伴可能现在面临着一个要本科毕业或者硕士毕业的阶段，应该也是非常抓耳挠腮的一个状态中，不知道该怎么选择问题，以及不知道该怎么切入进去。你有什么比较切实际的可以跟大家来分享一下吗？作为一个过来人，
我觉得就是首先大家秉承着毕业最重要的原则，就是找一些自己能来的东西，不要搞得太大。对，首先是就是做一些就是自己确实在本科，因为我理解大家其实，在大四的时候、大三、大四的时候都会比较忙，包括又要有学校的课业，然后要实习，然后还要写毕业论文，就有点忙不过来。就首先是毕业最重要，先稳住，然后呢，做一些自己就是不要做的太大，然后不可以实现，最后搞得自己毕业很困难的那种课题。然后呢，如果想做一些比较容易做的话，可以看看最近，比如说近期的顶刊呀，大家或者一些比较有名的学者都在关注些什么问题。一般这个方向是不会有什么大错的。不要尝试做一些实验，会容易搞得自己毕不了业。其次的话，就是也因为本科阶段大家其实对学术的研究其实都是可能还需要一些精进吧，所以也不要追求说自己会有什么突然的一种学术创新什么的，就是大家一般都做不到，我们也做不到，我们到了博士也不一定能做到，所以大家放宽心，好好写，踏踏实实的去做就可以了，它难度其实不大，对。
就是感觉本科的时候觉得写的毕业论文真是天要塌下来的事情，就怎么办？但是其实就是找到一个非常小的点切进去，我觉得就会好。然后不用想，就是我觉得我们毕竟本科生，不是说要小看自己的意思啊，但是如果能够解决一个比较 practical 的事情，真正的就是用自己的 efforts 来 make a little difference， 我觉得也挺好的。
对，就是不要找那种太宏观、太大的那种国家式的那种，就是国家层面那种课题。国社科课题去给自己做本科论文，对。
好，刚刚我们有一个佳慧，提出了一个我觉得非常 practical 的问题。他说想请教一下，读外文文献太慢有什么办法吗？或者说如何提高英语熟练度？确实，如果我们之后在海外读书的话，就可能你懂的，就 one week 就是整个 reading 的量很大，就可能确实会到个70-80页。我觉得按照我曾经的经验会有，那确实非常考验我们的时间以及整个信息搜索能力。所以 Fiona 陈博士，你有什么比较好的建议可以跟大家分享吗？
我个人建议是，就是你先慢点读，就是你先不要追求速度，你先把，因为 咱们正常使用的英语和你去比如说出国读书，何老师应该也有经验，出国读书他用的一些就是学术上的英语，它不太一样。
对，
包括他们写作的时候，你和你日常交流的英语是不太一样的。所以我个人建议你是先慢慢读，你先熟悉他们可能在什么环境下常用一些什么词汇，然后呢，你熟悉了以后，你就更好去理解它。然后你就可以你就不用咬文嚼字了，然后就可以大片大片的扫，然后速度自然就会提高。你其实读不快的原因，其实只是因为它的用词你不熟悉。你如果读一些你平时用的单词的话，你其实阅读速度不会太慢。
我觉得你说的特别好，就是我们得先熟悉它的套路，就是先把基础打好了之后，再慢慢的提速度。因为也其实，就是写论文，我觉得也就类似于，虽然这样说不太好，就是类似于八股文的一个状态，就是我们熟悉就哪一个先用什么，再用什么，其实后面的速度会慢慢的提起来，包括。我觉得另外一个点就是大家放轻松，还是放平心态，不就是个英文论文吗？我们别害怕，这个，我觉得是最重要的，不然真的会吓死你。包括如果有很多生词，我觉得可能就是 let it go，就不是说你，因为我曾经有强迫症，就是我看到生词我就想去查，但后面发现这个量太大了，我查不过来，我放弃了。就可能其实不影响阅读的情况下，觉得我们就是先读下去，大概知道大意，我觉得也挺好的。非常感谢 Fiona 的回答。我们来了另外一个子珍朋友的问题，他说想请教一下，从 topic 到 question 的过程的第4阶段，就是从 engage literature 在阅读过程中如何避免被大量的资料牵着走，从而丢失最初的问题意识，尤其是在最初的问题没有被清晰界定的情况下，我觉得还挺有意思的这个问题。
我觉得，就是我个人的习惯，就是读一篇以后，然后你把它先列出来，你大概想要研究什么问题，你先列出来，然后呢，你在读的时候呢，你再把它看怎么能够 piece 进去，就是怎么给它能放进对应你的问题，或者它是能反驳你的问题，还是支持你的观点，还是怎么样的？就是你肯定在提出问题以后会有一个假设，然后呢，这个 literature 你新读的这一篇能不能支持它，还是能够反驳它，或者它是怎么样会跟它有一个互动？你把它慢慢的写下来，然后其实你在 engage literature 的这个过程中，也是你在不断调整完善自己的问题的一个过程。就是你会发现，哎，我这个问题好像有人问过，但他不是这么问的。那他这么问会比我这么问会好在哪里？或者我会跟他有什么细微上的区别？你在读的这个过程中，其实也是一个跟他互动的过程中，就是你也会在阅读的过程中不断完善自己的问题。所以，首先明确自己的问题是什么，然后你可以被它所影响，但是你要明确的就是清晰的知道你的问题是什么。你可以把它写下来，你可以把它就是写下来贴到自己的桌面上都可以。反复的回来看你想问的问题，那样你就可以保证自己不会在阅读的过程中一直被它就是越带越远，越带越远。
我觉得挺好，就是按照我们现在的时代的发展，就是不忘初心，是吧？就是得知道自己想要什么，然后确实我觉得在看的时候确实很容易，因为就是一下子我们看了不同的，就是可能相似度70到80的 reading 或者说 research question，可能就是这个挺有意思，那个也不错，哎呀，突然忘了自己想要研究的是什么，
你可以把它
我觉得这是
写下来
非常
贴在那里。
对，然后再慢慢的看，我觉得就是确实可以看出子珍平常也有在好好的看文献，好好的思考中。好了，我刚刚又收到了一条私信，真倩应该没读错你的名字，想要问申请博士时写 proposal 的问题。来，真倩，你愿意自己开麦来细化你的问题吗？
耶，
来吧，
谢谢。就我
没读错你的
这个
名字吧？应该 OK。
问题有一点长。Hello，我叫珍惜，然后我是 UCL，我一直想申请博士，然后我去年之前尝试过，然后也是那种竞争比较激烈的项目，所以我就只是纯粹的试水，然后就涉及到写 proposal 这些问题。他们 program 都会非常的具体，然后可能因为申请时间的问题，你需要在短时间内写一个 proposal 出来，所以它不像说我们基于一个长期的一个研究，然后我自己非常用的给一个想要的一个 research question，所以可能就要配合着他们的 program 或者 outline 来写，所以 比较难的是按照他们的具体来，虽然是我们领域一样，但是按照他们的具体的来。第二个是时间很紧迫，那像这种情况下，嗯，怎么样提出一个 OK 的 research question，同时又容易符合他们招博士的要求呢？嗯。
OK，我大概复述一下你的问题，因为这边可能信号不是很好。就是你想知道如何在短时期内写出一个符合对方院校老师满意的 research proposal，然后你的研究问题可能不是你非常想研究的，是这个意思吗？
就是可能会可能会不那么一样，然后也对也对。
我个人不太建议你这么做，因为我觉得读博士是一个很漫长的过程。如果你对你的研究问题本身没有什么兴趣的话，你真的很难坚持下来。就是这个东西它多多少少需要一点热爱。然后呢，具体的就是比如说如何投其所好，这是另一个技能。就是你去看那个老师，比如说他研究什么，然后他写过什么东西，你去看他自己做的那个研究，然后你去看他 cite 了谁，然后或者是他会被谁 cite，然后从这个范围开始找到一个你能找类似有共鸣的一个问题，然后你可以从这里下手。但我个人建议你还是就是知道自己的优势在哪里，因为每个人他自己的训练背景是不一样的。那可能你跟他相比，你不可能完全复刻你老师的路线，所以你的研究的兴趣肯定也跟他会有所不同。其实博士录取在英国，他并不是说你跟他的研究问题完全匹配，他就会喜欢你，他可能只是单纯的喜欢你身上的一些特质。比如说你有一些什么背景，他是很看好的；比如说你有一些国际组织的背景，或者是你有一些哪里的实习经历，他是很看好的，他就会录取你。他并不是单纯的说你的研究跟我的研究一样。所以，如果你想投其所好，你就去看他做了什么。如果你是就是还是想自己就是读一个自己就是有热爱还是愿意做的一个东西的话，那还是做一个比较 grounded 的前期的一个research proposal 也可以。然后英国入学以后，其实你的研究问题是可以细微调整的，就它只要在大框架下，你是可以细微调整的，所以你也不用那么担心。
明白明白，我觉得非常的清晰，谢谢。但是有的时候就是他是和我喜欢感兴趣的，然后也是一直有去关注的topic，但可能他的 program 里面他会有一些，因为很具体，他们很多超级具体，可能就有一些东西我以前没那么涉及到多，就是我在这种情况下写 proposal，我就觉得有点难度，但是还是按你的那个方法，我觉得是可以的，包
OK，
括
谢谢。你说。
sorry，我突然想到就是，因为我们学校像教授他可能会去到别的机构，然后我就想跟着这个教授去读他的博，然后我就在想怎么去写这个 email 去讲，就是 make clear about my intention，就是这种东西，啊，有大概，
我觉得这个要因人而异了，就是你是否事先认识他，然后你跟他是否有什么交集，对吧？
有
对，
非
那你
常好的
就
关系。
跟他可以，我觉得你可以跟他很直接的说，就是老师，我很有兴趣读你的博，你今年要不要招人？
嗯，然后也要表现为了这个在做什么，然后以及我这样我为此做了哪些努力，这样。
我觉得你完全不太需要担心这件事情。我读博的时候，我就是跟我导师就是找他，我就说我要读你的博，他说那你先写吧，然后我就写了。 所以就是你不用想太多，先把自己该做的事情做好就可以。然后呢，然后因为他的录取标准他自己心里是有杆秤的，你是无法去确定他到底是看重什么的。你可能你的努力恰好努力到他的点上没有问题，可能偏了，他觉得你不太合适，今年录取你，对吧？也不一定，所以你很难说你有什么特别好的、非常非常正中靶心的方式来说能帮你进行这项录取。
明白了，
非常感谢。然后我们在后面也收到了，是 Fiona 你的学妹的问题，她说她现在也是那个北外的本科，然后读的就是国际关系，打算申请英国几个 DS 的 development 相关的是吧？我不太确定啊，硕士项目。然后如果他希望继续深造读博，你推荐的话是就读你曾经的那个 MPhil 的项目，同比较牛津、LSE 等学校的 DS 硕士项目，请问你觉得有什么差异之类的呢？就是你能综合评价一下吗？
我觉得每一个具体的项目，你应该需要去看他们官网上的介绍吧。他们每个英国的学校都会有自己的课纲，因为他们每年都会在改革什么的，所以我也不是很确定我们现在这个项目改成什么样了。你可以去看他们具体的课纲。整体来说的话，发展学是一个蛮跨学科的一个项目，做什么的人都有，包括很多背景是在国际组织，可能一些地方，然后工作完了几年以后回来，然后再去做一个硕士的这种。看你个人的偏好吧，看你个人的偏好，然后你可以结合他们自己的课程纲要，他们还是做的就是很规范的，很规范的，对。
OK，然后我还有一个我自己的小问题，就是我觉得刚刚我们讲到的是本科或者硕士的 research question，就是因为毕竟算是比较一个短期的研究，就是我感觉总体确实还好，我们可以比较偏 practical 一点。但是如果比如说我们要进行博士申请的时候，可能这个 research question 会跟着我们走4年，或者说走整一个那个研究过程。但是现在我又觉得整个信息发展或者时代发展特别特别的快，比如说 AI 可能一下就颠覆了或者怎么样，所以就是我想知道的是陈博士有什么建议吗？就是如何在变中或者说各种不断的变化当中如何保持，以及确实我目前也会有焦虑，比如说我提了一个 research question，然后可能不用我怎么回答，或者说政策一变啊，或者怎么一招，我的问题就没了，或者怎么样，就是你有什么建议或者看法吗？还是我们得有这个？
我觉得就是博士问题，首先它是个很大的问题。它不光是一个这个政策怎么影响的问题，它是一个这一类政策怎么影响什么一种问题。所以 OK， 这个政策可能在这个国家取消，但其他国家还是会有实行或者怎么样的。所以它会比本科和硕士的问题要更大，会更宏观一些。因为你最终对话的其实是像我说的，你要不然有实际的数据的新数据、新来源、新证据，要不然是你推翻之前的理论，你跟之前的理论对话，你不管你是反驳他，还是你支持他，还是你怎么样，就是它是一个就是这个整体这个项目的体量会更大一些，所以它并不会被一些很小的或者一些小的东西所影响到。它跟比如说我们经常在网上看到的一些研究什么天体突然炸了这种事情，它不太一样。对，它是有一个延续性的。它即便取消，你也可以从反面论证。OK， 那它取消了，它有什么影响？就是它仍然是有一个角度是你可以去继续你的研究的。所以其实这个方面不用特别担心。
OK，可以。Watch Hard Review，非常感谢。我们还有别的小伙伴，因为时间也差不多了，还有别的小伙伴想要提问吗？如果没有的话，我们就如果大家愿意的话，可以开一下摄像头，我们进行一个合照。我也是给大家1分钟的时间，如果愿意的话可以开。然后 Fiona 能够辛苦你把你的那个邮箱打在聊天框里面吗？这样子，
可以。
这样子，如果大家之后想要联系你的话，也可以，也跟你取得联系。已经看到有小伙伴陆陆续续的打开了摄像头。然后我们也会在这期结束之后给大家一个这一期的回顾，大概这周内会发推文，因此大家也可以如果也持续关注，如果想要再复习一下的话，那接下来我就进行一个简单的截图了哈。OK。